I moved all my daughter's belongings to my parents' house and left nothing for my husband's affair kid. My husband told me Saturday that he'd had an affair and had a kid from it. Our kids are 14 and 10, and this child is 9. Something happened to her mother in the last couple of weeks, and he was leaving to go get her. My daughter came to me crying, saying he told her she had to share her room and her stuff with this girl for now. I called my parents and they agreed to let me stay in their guest room. We packed her stuff and Monday my parents, sister, Bill, and nephews helped us move all her belongings to my parents' place. They also helped put locks on my bedroom and my son's bedroom. We moved all my husband's stuff from my bedroom to the 4th bedroom he used as a home office. Yesterday evening, my husband got home with his affair kid. He got mad about all the stuff being gone and nothing being left for her. She's from a much warmer area and didn't have clothes for the cold here. This morning, he caught me in the kitchen to complain again and said I was being cruel by not making my daughter share with her. So, I looked him dead in the eye and said, "You want to know what's cruel? Having an affair for years while your wife thinks you're working late. Cruel is bringing your secret child home and expecting our daughter to give up her room. For your mistake," he tried to interrupt, but I kept going. "You know what else is cruel? Finding out your husband has been lying to your face for 9 years. While you're making him dinner every night?" He got defensive and said it wasn't like that. That the affair was only 3 months long when the kid was conceived. But then I asked him how he knew so much about this girl if it was just 3 months. How did he know her favorite color was purple? How did he know she hated Brussels sprouts? How did he know she was scared of thunderstorms? The look on his face told me everything. This wasn't a 3-month affair. This had been going on for years. He'd been playing daddy to another family while mine fell apart. My daughter had been begging me for years to spend more time with daddy. She'd ask why he worked so late every night. Why he had to travel so much. Now I knew where he really was, tucking another little girl into bed, while mine cried herself to sleep wondering why daddy didn't want to read her stories anymore. I told him he could buy his affair kid new clothes with the money he'd been spending on his second family. That Mia wasn't giving up anything for the kid he chose over us for 9 years. That if he wanted to play house with his other daughter, he could do it without forcing my children to sacrifice for his choices. He called me vindictive and said I was punishing an innocent child. I told him innocent. Maybe she's innocent. But what about Mia and Jake? They're innocent too. And they've been paying the price for your lies for 9 years. He went silent. And I didn't let up. You think walking in here today with your secret child makes you a hero? It doesn't erase the years you missed: birthdays, holidays, bedtime stories. You think showing up now fixes anything? It doesn't. Not unless you're willing to be honest and face the consequences. Mia peeked from the stairs, clutching her blanket. I motioned her to come down. She slipped her hand into mine, trembling. "Mom, he says I have to share my things," she whispered. I knelt so I was at her level. "Mia, your room, your belongings, your space, they belong to you. He doesn't get to take that from you. He has choices and you shouldn't have to pay for them." My husband's jaw tightened, and he tried to argue again, but I interrupted. "No, you will not make my children sacrifice for your mistakes. You will find a solution that doesn't hurt them. Or I'll make sure the courts understand exactly what's happened here." For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Fear, not of losing me but fear of losing control. That's when I realized how long I had ignored the signs, how carefully he had hidden everything, and how deeply I needed to reclaim our lives. I spent the rest of the morning with my children packing extra blankets, warm clothes, and toys for the affair kid. Not because I agreed with him, but because I refused to let Mia and Jake feel responsible for someone else's choices. I made sure Mia could see that her feelings mattered, that her home was safe, and that her mother would fight for her. When he returned from dropping off groceries for the new child, he tried to apologize. I listened silently, letting him spill words that had no weight. Then I said, "Apologies don't undo years of neglect. They don't fix what you broke. You need to decide what kind of father you want to be, and I need to decide what kind of life I want for my children." He tried to argue again, claiming he loved all 3 kids and just wanted harmony. I laughed bitterly. Harmony? You think harmony comes from dumping your mistakes into someone else's home and expecting a child to surrender her room? No. Harmony comes from honesty, accountability, and putting your family first. That night, I sat with Mia and Jake in our temporary room at my parents' house. We ate popcorn, watched a movie, and talked about our own little adventures, books we'd read, songs we loved, and dreams for the future. We laughed, cried, and hugged tighter than ever before. I wanted them to know that despite everything, their world could still be safe, warm, and full of love. I also drafted a plan: locks on our rooms, boundaries on visitation, and legal advice on what to expect if he didn't cooperate. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for protection, fairness, and the chance to heal our family. As I tucked Mia into bed, she whispered, "Mom, thank you for not letting him take my room." I kissed her forehead and said, "I'll always protect you, always." And in that moment, I realized the truth sometimes. Being a mother meant standing up, being strong, and not letting anyone rewrite the rules of your home, no matter how they tried. Even as a storm of anger, lies, and betrayal raged around us, I knew one thing for certain: my children's safety, dignity, and love would never be compromised for someone else's selfish choices. And with that, I felt a flicker of hope, a promise that our family, though shaken, would endure. Story to my in-laws banned me from their daughter's wedding, saying we only invited educated people. I didn't argue. But when the wedding band started playing, everyone turned as I walked in with the CEO they were begging to meet. Chapter 1: The invitation I wasn't supposed to read. The day the invitation arrived, I was lying on my back beneath a Chevy, grease streaked across my arm, socket wrench in hand. Julia, my wife, stepped into the garage holding a cream-colored envelope edged with gold foil. She didn't smile. She just stood there for a second, hesitant. "It's from your daughter," she said quietly. I rolled out from under the car and wiped my hands on a rag. "About time. Let's see it." She hesitated again, then handed it to me like it was fragile. The envelope smelled faintly of roses and expensive paper. My name was written in soft cursive, Mr. Michael Harris. I opened it slowly. The words were elegant, the kind you print when you want to look important. It said, "You are warmly invited to the wedding of Emily Wilton and Daniel Harris." My daughter's name, my son-in-law to be, a date, a venue, a note about dress code, black tie only. And then in smaller print at the bottom, added by hand in what looked like gold ink, "We only invited close family and educated guests." For a moment, I just stared at the line, then read it again. Educated guests. That was her polite way of saying, "You're not coming." Julia's voice was soft. "She didn't write that, Mick. You know it was her fiance's parents." I nodded, but the words still stung. Those people, the Wiltons, had always seen me as beneath them. I wasn't a lawyer or an engineer, or someone with letters after my name. I was just a mechanic, the man who raised her after her mother died, who paid for her school by fixing engines till midnight. "I built her first car with my hands," I said quietly. "Guess that doesn't count as education." Julia came closer. "You don't have to prove anything to them, let it go." But I couldn't. That night, when the house was quiet, I sat at my workbench staring at the invitation. Beside it sat another paper, the one they didn't know existed. A signed partnership agreement between me and Richard Harrington, CEO of one of the biggest automotive groups in the country. The deal was confidential. The ink barely dry. And suddenly, that gold handwriting on the invitation didn't feel like an insult anymore. It felt like the setup to something poetic. I folded the invitation once neatly and tucked it inside the contract folder. Then whispered to myself, "You wanted educated guests? Then you're about to meet the man who taught them all how engines run." Chapter 2. The call they kept making. 2 days before the wedding, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Unknown numbers, back to back, persistent. The kind of calls you don't get unless someone's desperate. By the fourth one, I wiped my hands on a rag and answered. "Harris Automotive," I said. A woman's voice came through, calm but rehearsed. "Dr. Harris. This is Evelyn Grant calling on behalf of the Wilton family. I believe you know them." I smiled faintly. "I do. What can I do for them?" "Well," she continued, "we understand you have a working relationship with Mr. Richard Harrington, CEO of Harrington Automotive Group." Now it was my turn to pause. That name, the one they wanted, the one they'd spent months trying to impress, was my silent business partner. "Yes," I said slowly. "We've met." There was a rustle of papers on her end. "Mr. Wilton wanted me to personally extend an invitation to Mr. Harrington for his daughter's wedding. We're hosting several potential investors, and your associate's presence would be highly beneficial." I could almost hear the arrogance behind her polished tone. The same tone I'd heard from Wilton years ago when he shook my hand at Emily's graduation and said, "It's admirable how far you've come for someone without a degree." I leaned against my desk. "I'm afraid Mr. Harrington's quite busy this weekend, oh," she said, disappointment creeping into her voice. "Could you let him know it's the Wilton wedding? He'll understand the value of attending." I couldn't help the small chuckle that slipped out. "He already knows." A pause. "He does?" "Yes," I said evenly. "He's aware of the event." When I hung up, I looked at the folded invitation sitting on the shelf beside my wrench set. That golden handwriting glinting under the dim garage light. "Educated guests only." I brushed the dust off the partnership file, my thumb tracing the embossed logo on the folder. Harrington Group Holdings. They wanted Harrington at their wedding. They were going to get him, but not the way they expected. Chapter 3. The name on the welcome banner. The Wiltons spared no expense. The wedding venue, a grand country estate in or outside the city, Looked like something out of a luxury magazine. Marble fountains, champagne towers, a full orchestra warming up near the rose garden. Guests arrived in designer suits and pearl gowns, their conversations buzzing with business talk and polished laughter. It was the kind of world where image was oxygen, and I wasn't supposed to breathe it. But tonight, I wasn't just breathing it. I owned part of it. I arrived quietly, stepping out of a black sedan that belonged to someone far more powerful. Richard Harrington, my business partner. He adjusted his cufflinks and gave me a look as we approached the entrance. "You sure about this, Mike?" he asked. "You could have sent me alone." I smiled faintly. "No. They need to see me. Not the man they think I am. The man they decided I wasn't." Harrington chuckled. "Then let's give them a show." Inside the ballroom, a massive white banner hung above the head table, hand-painted in gold. "Welcome, Mr. Richard Harrington, honored guest of the Wilton family." Thomas Wilton, the bride's father, was practically glowing as he greeted guests. His voice carried across the room. "Mr. Harrington's expected any moment. Once he arrives, we'll begin the dinner." He didn't see us walk in at first, but when he did, when he saw Harrington shake my hand at the entrance, saw the two of us talking like equals, his face drained of color. "Mr. Harrington," he stammered, rushing forward. I didn't expect you to." Harrington smiled smoothly. "I wouldn't miss my partner's daughter's wedding." Partner, Wilton blinked, confused. "Yes," Harrington replied, nodding toward me. "Mike and I run the parts manufacturing arm that supplies my entire group. One of the best engineers I've ever met." The silence that followed was absolute. Guests stopped mid-sentence. Glasses froze in midair. Wilton's wife stared at me as if I'd walked in from another planet. "You mean him?" she whispered. I smiled politely. "The uneducated mechanic?" "Yeah, that's me." The room shifted after that. Whispers snaking through the air, faces turning red. The same people who'd laughed at my name behind closed doors now pretended they didn't recognize me. Emily, my daughter, saw it all from across the dance floor. Our eyes met, and in that instant, something passed between us. A flash of recognition, guilt, and maybe pride. Harrington leaned close and murmured, "You wanted poetic? Here it comes." He stepped forward and shook Wilton's hand one last time. "I have to say," he said, his voice carrying easily, "it's good to finally meet the family of the man who helped build my company from the ground up." Wilton tried to laugh, but it came out cracked and hollow, and all around the room, the same question whispered through the crowd like wildfire. How did we not know who he was? That banner above the table, honored guest of the Wilton family, might have been meant for Harrington. But by the time dinner began, everyone in that room knew who they were really honoring. Chapter 4. The toast that ended it all. The dinner began like every high society dinner does. Polite smiles, hollow laughter, forks clinking against porcelain plates worth more than a month's rent. But beneath the chandeliers, I could feel the tension hum like a power line. Every time someone at the head looked at me, they blinked too long. Every word from the Wiltons came out stiff, rehearsed. They had built an evening around class and pedigree, and I had dismantled it just by sitting down. The waiter's whisper. Halfway through the meal, a waiter approached Thomas Wilton and leaned down to whisper, "Sir, the event coordinator just asked who should approve the sponsorship banners for the media section." Thomas frowned. "What banners?" The waiter hesitated. "The ones for tonight's sponsor, Harrington Group Holdings. They're asking which company division should be credited for the funding." I caught the moment the realization struck him. The tremor in his jaw, the twitch in his left eye. He turned to Harrington, trying to sound composed. "Otto, I didn't know your company was sponsoring our event tonight." "How generous of you." Harrington smiled politely. "It wasn't me who approved the donation." He raised his glass slightly in my direction. "It was your daughter's father." A murmur rippled through the tables. Forks paused. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. The toast. The MC, oblivious to the social storm brewing, tapped his glass and called out, "Ladies and gentlemen, before dessert, Mr. Michael Harris would like to say a few words." My daughter's eyes widened. Her fiancé's parents froze. I stood slowly, the weight of every year, every insult, every cold shoulder grounding me instead of breaking me. I held up my glass. "Family," I began softly, "isn't built on degrees or titles or invitations that get rewritten when someone's not fancy enough." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. "It's built on sacrifice. On nights spent working when no one's watching. On love that doesn't care how you spell your last name." I looked at Emily. "I built the car that drove my daughter to school. I built the walls that kept her warm. And I built the engine parts that run in half the cars parked outside tonight." Then I turned to Thomas and his wife. "So when you said only educated people deserve to be here, you weren't wrong. But education doesn't just come from classrooms." I set my glass down calm and steady. "It comes from work, from mistakes, from surviving." A long aching silence filled the ballroom. Then Harrington raised his glass to the man who taught me what real intelligence looks like. The room erupted, half in applause, half in stunned disbelief. The band that kept playing as I sat. The band started up again. A soft, soulful tune. Emily quietly slipped away from her fiancé's parents and came to my table. Tears glimmered in her eyes. I didn't know. Dad, she whispered. I thought you were just trying to make peace. I smiled gently. No, sweetheart. I was just waiting for the right song. She hugged me, the first real hug in years. And as she did, her fiancé's father stood motionless, his reputation unraveling in real time. Because the only story people would tell after this night wasn't about his wealth. It was about the man they tried to keep out and the applause that followed him instead. Final chapter. The invoice they never saw. The next morning, the ballroom was quiet again. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the music all gone. But something else lingered. A story that spread faster than any gossip Thomas Wilton had ever fueled. By breakfast, 3 different guests had already called him. Not to congratulate him, but to ask if it was true. If he had really insulted the man who financed his daughter's wedding. Because that's what they learned overnight. Not from me, not from Emily, but from the fine print, the paper trail. 3 months earlier, while they were finalizing their guest list and carefully excluding my name, I had quietly been finalizing something else. Through Harrington Group Holdings, I arranged a full sponsorship for the Wilton wedding venue, the catering, and the post-wedding business brunch Thomas was planning to impress investors with. He didn't know because it was handled by a corporate subsidiary, Larkwood Investments, one of my lesser-known holdings. The entire event had been billed directly to my company. And at the bottom of that stack of invoices, the one Thomas signed without reading, was a single line in bold. Primary sponsor, Larkwood Investments, a division of Harris Engineering and Holdings. He'd never looked to the footer, never asked who Harris was. Not until the photos from the wedding hit local media the next morning. Captioned, Larkwood founder Michael Harris attends daughter's wedding. Silent partner of Harrington Group. Hosts event. The comments were merciless. Wait, isn't that the guy Wilton's family mocked? Guess they invited him after all as the man footing the bill. The visit. 2 days later, I was in my workshop. Same place, same tools, same smell of oil and pine, when I heard tires crunching on gravel. Thomas stepped out of his car, wearing the same tailored suit from the wedding. But his confidence was gone. He looked smaller, deflated, like a man who finally understood what pride can cost. I came to apologize, he said quietly. I was wrong about you, about everything. I nodded once. Took you long enough to read the invoice. He exhaled, eyes down. I didn't know. That's the problem, I said. You never cared to, he nodded, unable to argue. I'll tell you this though. I added, I didn't pay for that wedding to humiliate you. I did it for Emily so she'd know what real love looks like. Quiet, steady, without conditions. Thomas swallowed hard. You're a better man than me. No, I said, wiping grease from my hands. Just one who learned the value of reading the fine print, the irony. They never escaped. Within weeks, the Wiltons' reputation crumbled. Investors backed away. Their business suffered because no one wanted to associate with the family that mocked the very man who made their event possible. But me, I never mentioned it again. I didn't need to. Some lessons echo louder when you stop repeating them. Epilogue, the man she thanked first. 6 months later, spring rolled in with the soft scent of renewal. The Wiltons' mansion had gone quiet. Most of their parties canceled, their business deal stalled. But in the middle of that silence, one bright sound returned to my life. My daughter's voice. Emily called me one morning, not formal, not distant, just Dad, the way she used to say it when she was little. Can you come to the university next Friday? She asked. It's important. When I arrived, the campus was alive with banners and flowers, the annual alumni awards ceremony. Students in gowns and caps walked past with smiles, and among them Emily stood at the podium in a sleek navy dress, confident and radiant. As the applause died down, she took a deep breath and said, before I speak, there's someone I need to thank. The audience went quiet. She smiled toward me, her voice trembling, but proud. My father taught me that worth doesn't come from titles or fancy invitations. It comes from work, from kindness, and from never letting pride get in the way of love. She gestured toward the back of the hall, toward me. He was banned from my wedding, insulted for not having a degree. But he built the very company that funded the roof above our heads that night. He didn't say a word in anger. He just showed us all what dignity looks like. The crowd turned. Dozens of faces looked my way, some surprised, some moved. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. I wasn't used to being seen in these rooms, Emily continued, her voice breaking slightly. So, when people ask who taught me resilience, who taught me how to lead with grace, I tell them about the man who never raised his voice but changed everything with quiet strength. She raised her award in the air. This one's for you, Dad, after the ceremony. She found me near the exit. For the first time in years, she hugged me tightly. No pretense, no hesitation. Thank you. She whispered. For what? I asked. For never making me choose sides. For letting me learn the hard way and still being here when I did. I smiled. That's what fathers do. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the campus clock tower, I noticed something small and almost poetic. A new plaque had been placed outside the renovated business wing, the same one my company had quietly donated to. It read Harris Hall, dedicated to those who build, not boast. And beneath that inscription, one line in smaller print, donor, Michael Harris. I didn't need applause. I didn't need revenge anymore because the real victory wasn't the humiliation or the irony. It was the moment my daughter, once ashamed of my work-worn hands, stood before the world and called me her father with pride. That was the only thank you I ever needed, and this time, everyone heard it. Was this revenge perfectly justified? Or should the storm have raged harder? Drop your verdict below. I read every single one. If you are watching this video, comment below and tell us where you are watching this video from. Hit like if you crave justice and share the story with someone who needs its fire.